All right, guys. So I wanted to relate this to Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is a pretty interesting guy, and it's kind of funny even to talk about Dave Ramsey. But one of the facts about Dave Ramsey that he doesn't seem to share a lot, but which makes sense if you just use your mind, is he made a bit of money doing real estate and other things that he was into, but the vast majority of his wealth comes from his TV show and his radio show. So when he kind of claims that he's this self-made millionaire real estate guy, if you just think about what he's doing and how long he's been in the radio and TV industry, it just makes sense that he's actually not really a real estate mogul. He's not like this real estate billionaire. He's actually a radio and TV personality. So what he's really good at is being a personality, and he's basically an actor. He's a radio voice, and that's not an insult in any way, because actors and radio people are entertaining, and they can teach us things and they can show us things in a better way sometimes than boring people like me on an old computer. So Dave Ramsey's got a good thing going, and he's helped a lot of people. I would say generally, like, I've never heard him say anything that I couldn't have thought up in my own head, or that my dad or my grandpa didn't tell me, like, always save money for a rainy day, don't spend more than you make more than you spend, sit down and write that on a piece of paper, talk to your wife about it. I mean, you know, and looking through some of his stuff, like, I think it just sells because people want to be told what to do. They want someone to like hold their hand and tell them, like, well, like, how do I get out of debt? I mean, it really does make sense. Like, it's really easy to get out of debt. You just got to stop spending more than you make, and go make some more money and then pay your debts off. Like, don't buy more crap. But, a lot of people just need to be told what to do. But hey, to his credit, if he has helped millions of people be smarter with their money, to not be into the consumerist lifestyle, to not rack up credit card debt, like, he's only done good things for our country, good things for people in general. So I'm definitely not a hater of Dave Ramsey. The only unfortunate thing that I think happens is because he's not an investment expert, because he actually doesn't understand investing really at all, but because he has such a dedicated following, a lot of people who benefit from and believe him on the budget, getting out of debt side, will unfortunately follow him, you know, hook and sinker with his ideas on investing. And the fact is that Dave Ramsey was never good at investing, and he still isn't good at investing, and he probably doesn't even know what investing really is. And again, he does not provide his results. He doesn't even really manage his own money, so he's not a stock trader. So if you want to learn how to trade stocks and to trade them well, you don't want to follow somebody who doesn't actually trade stocks. Okay, I mean, that just makes sense. So that's enough of the Dave Ramsey bashing. Let's get into the whole idea of the index fund, and see whether or not this idea actually holds out. So we're not going to bash on his personality anymore, but we will examine one of his ideas. And one of his ideas is that the uh, the index funds, he's really big on these index mutual funds. And he's always saying how if you just invest in these funds, like, you'll make so much money. They have such a high return. They beat the market and all this stuff. So let's look at like an index fund. Let's just look at like SPY, Standard and Poor. That's we just learned about indexes. If you didn't watch the previous video, watch that video to learn about what an index is. But if you look at this index, the SPY, it's easy to see that over time this is going up. So when people say that if you just buy index funds, like, you have to make money, I mean, technically, mathematically, yes. If you invested at this and held on to it for at least 10 years in almost any situation, you would have made some money. But now that I have this pulled up, and I hope you can see this, let's actually look and see how this could be really misleading. The number one reason why index funds are not all they're cracked up to be is because they average your earnings, your gains over a long period of time. So they'll use like, if you would have invested in the S&P index for 10 years or 15 or 20 years, well, the big problem with that is, first of all, who is going to buy into an index fund and hold it for 20 years? Okay. That means that when you have major downturns, that you're comfortable with that and you don't feel like you need to get in there and mess with it or put it somewhere else. Now, everybody can be, cavalier and have their bravado or whatever and say, well, I'll never touch my money. I'm a really smart investor and I'm responsible and, you know, uh, whatever. And so when you get to this point, look here at February 14th where I've got my arrow at. If you were here in this index fund at this point in this ETF at 337, okay, you dropped on February 14th all the way down to 228. So you lost like 30% in 14th of February to, I mean, in like what, 6 weeks, 5 weeks? In 5 weeks, you lost 30% of your investment, which means that if you had 100% of your money in index funds at this point, like in the SPY, you would have lost 30%. Like if you had 100 grand, you would be down to 70. You just lost 30 grand of your hard earned money. For most middle class people, for most working class people, you're talking about losing probably like at 7 or 8 years worth of savings for the average person, like in 5 weeks. Okay. The question is not whether or not the market moves up and down. It does, and we don't control that. The question is can people actually hang on during that time? Because that's one of Dave's and all these pro index fund people, that's one of their main assumptions, is that they just hang on for dear life no matter what. But do you really control, your emotions when this happens? Let me ask you a logical, common sense question. Do most people have good control of their emotions in most aspects of their life? Your answer should be no. And if you don't say no, I think you probably haven't been around long enough, like you're a teenager, or you just don't get out much. You don't know people. You don't watch the news, like people shooting each other over road rage, people like, getting divorced because they don't like somebody, people doing all kind of crazy, making all these huge decisions just because they feel something in a moment. Okay. So humans generally have a bad track record for controlling their emotions. And if you don't think that when you lose 30% of your hard-earned money in 5 weeks that it has no emotional impact on you, you are crazy. What I actually saw during this time, people that I know that and knew that invested, friends, people that weren't investors but had their money in these index funds, thought they were really savvy. I think most of them that I knew started pulling their money out, and some of them still haven't gotten back in. What that means is that they missed out on this uptrend. Look at here on the graph. They missed out on that opportunity to make the money back because they got scared and jumped out. So that's the point. That's the point I'm getting at as why premise number one is false. Premise number one is these index funds will make you money because you will stay in for a long period of time. Who's to say that you have the character and the emotional strength and the know-how to stay in these things after you've lost 30% of your money? That is a huge assumption. And I would say most people do not stay in. They get out, they switch over, they get angry, they call up their manager or whatever, they want to change. And this happens all the time. Okay. There's a whole industry built just around that, transferring 401ks from angry, disgruntled customers. So again, big point is if you get in and out of this at any time, if you get out right here, then you miss out on this run. Okay. If you get out down here, you missed out on this big run. You're going to miss out if you get out, and people frequently get in and out of these. So are you going to stay in this for 20 or 30 years? I'd say most of you are not. So that's the number one thing. Number two problem with index funds is this is probably the most basic problem. By definition, an index fund can only index what the market is doing. So here's the big kicker. You will only ever do what the market allows you to do. You cannot do better than the market, meaning the market is the one that trades for you. When you invest in the market in an index fund, you are no longer trading. You're not using your brain to figure out how to get in and out of stocks, how to buy and sell, when to hold, how to take profits. You're not getting onto these rocket stocks that take off for the moon. And you're not also getting whacked really bad. But the point is, it's like you're not really an entrepreneur. You're not in full control. And you can't, here's the number one thing, you're not building a skill, okay? When you're not in the market, buying and selling individual stocks, you're not really gaining any skill to speak of, okay? Because you don't learn the nuances of how to trade. You don't learn the nuance of how long to hold things and such. So you're handing over your skill as an investor to a company because you think that they'll do that for you. You're handing over your ability to be better than the market and trade and make more money than the market by doing what? By investing in an index. When you do the index, you're basically saying, I don't need or want to make more money than the market can ever make. And I'm okay with losing every time the market loses. So you got to understand this, that people who trade well, when the market is way down, those traders are not way down. And when the market is kind of up, those traders are really up. That's what makes a good trader, is they are better than the market. They are like zooming in and out of these big waves. The market is like a big ship, but like these little boats are going in and out and they're doing more things than the big boat can do. That's kind of the point of being a trader. That's the only reason why anybody would ever want to be a trader, because you can outperform the market, and people do it all the time. So you're kind of exchanging, your time. You're exchanging, the more time you spend in your life, you're getting older and you're going to die one day. You're spending more time not learning how to trade the longer you only stay in these index or these mutual funds or even these ETFs. It's not to say that it's a bad idea to have some index funds or some mutual funds, some money in that, but to just kind of like kick back and put all your money in index funds and ETFs and stuff, basically you're trading your time for like laziness. You're saying, well, I don't care. I don't want to become a better trader. I don't want to put that effort in, or I don't need the money or the percentage extra. I don't want to deal with the stress. So that's fine, but we always have to pay for something. You know, anytime you go buy something, you have to pay for it. When you buy the ease and the security of index funds and ETFs, the price that you pay is by not becoming a great trader. Every day, every week of your life that you're not in the markets, trying to figure out what to do with the stock that you've won money at or you've lost at, trying to figure out what to invest in next because you don't have some manager doing it for you, or trying to see, you know, what the market might be missing. You don't get to experience or learn or grow by any of that when you're in these funds. So look, if you had $10 million, if I had $10 million, I would just buy index funds. That's what I'll say, because they perform, you know, about 4 or 5% a year on average. When you hear Ramsey or whatever, or any of these guys talking about like 8, 9%, that is baloney. That is not adjusted for inflation. And that's just not true. And it also depends on when you get in. Okay. So just keep that in mind about index funds. But I did want to go back over here real quick and bring up one more point, which is that if you see where you get in that's going to be a big determination of how much money you make over time. So here's the thing. If I would have invested in the market on, let's just pick a random date, 26th of July, 2019, and I'm going to stay in for 10 years. Okay. So I want to go, sorry, I wanted the max on this. Okay. Sorry. So let's say we get in somewhere right here, back in 1st of June, 2007, right before the big crash. So this is me. Let's say I'm a 25-year-old and I want to invest in funds. I want to get index funds. I'm really hot on them. And this is at $154. So I'm going to go from June 2007 all the way to June 2017. And let's see what happens. All the way to June 2017. Okay. All right, looks like we have an increase of 57.7% cumulative. Okay, so that means that over a 10-year period, this asset, this fund made us 57% on the money cumulatively. So assuming that you didn't get out, you didn't mess with it, you just put it in there for 10 years. So let me ask you, is that 10% a year? If you came out making 57%, mathematically, you already know that that's not 10% a year. That's a lot less. Let's use this tool right here to figure out how much you actually make adjusted for inflation. So here we've got 2007. And we're going to go to 2070. Let's just look at what we would have done if we would have invested for 10 years. This website right here can give us information on inflation, which is very important because inflation taxes your money every year. It makes your money worth less and less. So if we come down here to, let's see, right here. Okay, the actual amount of money that you made, it says right here, the average inflation rate of 1.69 has a compounding effect between 2007 and 2017. This yearly inflation compounds to produce an overall price difference of 18.22 over 10 years. So those years were actually a relatively low inflation, but what it basically means is that you still need to deduct 18% off of your total earnings to show how inflation ate away at the value of your money. So you see here, instead of it being 146% change in the investment, or 46%, what you actually got was this right here, okay? So it said this means the inflation adjusted real return of our $1 investment is 1.08 cents, okay? And so this means that we didn't make as much money as we thought. So one of the things that Ramsey is not taking into account is interest adjusted or inflation adjusted earnings on these mutual funds. You got to understand that if your money is sitting anywhere, or your money just exists anywhere for 10 years, inflation is eating away at it like sometimes 2 to 3% a year. So you have to make at least that much. So even when you show some kind of like gain, if it's not at least 2 or 3% a year, you're actually probably just breaking even. Okay. So when you make 8 or 9% a year on an index fund, you have to immediately subtract the 2 or 3%. And then you have to subtract for the fees that you're paying. And then in some way, you've got to also figure all the money that you're not making by being more involved in the market, right? Like, and that your skills are not gaining. You're just kind of kicking back and investing in these index funds. Okay. So yeah, it shows you inflation that $1 in 2017 is worth $1.18 in 2017. So our buying power is always decreasing. So we need to keep that into consideration. That's really all I got to say about the index funds. Again, two biggest problems that you're going to have is they don't actually outperform the market. They're meant to be copycats and mirror the market. So you can never be better than the market. So when the market is down, like this year from 2007 to like, it took 5 years. So there's another thing. It takes 5 years just to make money in this scenario. Like, can you imagine? I can't imagine as a trader, like I've been trading for 5 years straight and never made a single dime in 5 years. Like, how could that even happen? But people allow this to happen in their index funds and their so-called passive investments, like all the time. And it's really foolish because you know that traders during this time, there were tons of traders in here making tons of money. And I'm not just talking about traders that were shorting the market. I'm talking about traders that were going long, that were bulls. The bulls made tons of money in this market too. They just weren't foolish and they weren't like sitting and hoping and waiting for these things to come up. So yeah, man, you're talking 5 or 6 years for this thing to come back. And so if you would have gotten in at this time, would you have had the fortitude to wait for 5 years, taking a loss almost every single year or just breaking even? Would you have had the fortitude to wait? Because from 2013 until 18, the next 5 years was actually not too bad. It was a 97% increase. We've got to adjust for inflation, of course, but again, how long can you hold in there? And you see that the money that you lost or that you didn't make in these 5 years, inflation still ate away at you. Opportunity ate away at your money that's just sitting there doing nothing. So yeah, the next 5 years you make money, but you've got to kind of make up for all that time and all that loss that you had from the years before. So there is a huge disadvantage to this so-called diversification by buying a big basket of stocks like a mutual fund, an index fund, an ETF. There's a huge disadvantage to letting other people decide for you what they think is important in the market. There's a huge disadvantage to just taking a passive look at the market and thinking it's too complicated for me. I can't do this. Try to think of it in a different way. Try to think of yourself as having everything you need inside of you to be a great investor, but you just have to get the time and experience. You have to get the know-how of doing this, and eventually you'll be good at it, and you will definitely outperform these index funds. Again, last disclaimer, not bashing index funds. I think that if I had $10 million, I would just invest in index funds because they're hands off. I wouldn't have to spend time in the markets. I could go do whatever I want to do and enjoy my life, and not treat this as like a job sometimes. And yeah, they're relatively a lot safer. But for small accounts and for younger people especially, you have time on your side. You have time to learn and to grow and to become a great trader. And that skill will follow you for your whole life. And that skill will only get better with time. And that skill you can take with you and make money like all over the world using your computer. Okay. ETFs and index funds will never give you that. They will never give you experience. They're not your teachers. They're not there to correct and improve you. Only you can do that to yourself through the market. So that would be my kind of like hypothetical response to Dave Ramsey, which is like, why are you pushing these index funds on all these people with small accounts, right? You're pushing these funds on people who really should be trading aggressively and growing their funds at 20, 30, 40 years old. You should be trading aggressive and using margin and like maxing out your money, because if you lose a little bit of money, you still have years left to make it up and keep trading and getting better and better. Like, you don't need to be like a scared little grandpa when you're 30 years old. You don't need to be treating your $5,000 like a scared little grandpa. It's not $500,000. It's not your life savings, and you're not going to die alone. Like, you need to treat this like an opportunity to grow and learn, to be an entrepreneur, and you will benefit from that. The universe will pay you the salary that you demand from it by putting in the work and overcoming fear and greed and all these different things. Like, you will benefit from it. So anyway, that kind of went on a rant about trying to like encourage, but like I really feel passionately about the market, and I hope that like a lot of people can learn how to trade and be good. And that's why I do this for free. And just because I want people to learn and become better and have good things in their life. So that's all I got. And again, think about advantages and disadvantages of everything. Okay, everything has a price that we have to pay for it. Nothing is free. And Dave Ramsey doesn't know anything about investing, but that's not his fault. That's not his forte. But don't get stuck and brainwashed listening to Dave Ramsey tell you how to invest when he doesn't even invest in a single stock. At least he can't prove it. So that's all I got for today. And I hope you enjoy that. Thank you so much.